Hey, y'all. Hey, it's JJ Conway. I'm here with my very special guest, Ultra Cubby on YouTube. You can find him at Ultra Cubby. And we have tried everything we can think of to get the video working. We've restarted, we've cleared our cache, we've cleared out all the extra tabs. You know, some of us have more tabs than others. We've done all the things, and yet still we cannot get the video on. So we're just going to use slides today and hope that you enjoy our presentation. It's probably going to be a little shorter because you can't see me talking to give my recommendations. Hi, Ultra Cubby. Do you have something you want to say to everybody?
Just one thing.
Okay, what's that you've got there?
It's another football card.
Oh, a football affirmation. What does it say?
It says 59. Joy is the best strategy on game day.
Ooh, do you have fun during the games?
When we win. Not when we lose. Not when we lose 28-0.
Yeah, that was pretty tough. But that was an undefeated team. So, what is that? What does that affirmation mean to you? Okay. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah.
All right. Say goodnight to everybody.
What?
Oh, you're gonna stay here?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, everybody.
You said say goodnight.
Well, yeah. Even if you're gonna snuggle, they're not gonna be talking with you. Unless you're gonna talk about real estate. Do you want to talk about real estate?
Tell me what to talk, because you know I love to talk.
I know you do, but you don't know anything about this stuff. But you can snuggle.
Aww.
You can still snuggle. I guess that's a good thing.
Money is not the most important thing in life.
Yeah? What's the most important thing in life?
God.
Making it to heaven for sure. Relationship with the Lord.
All the stuff that relates to God and Jesus and that stuff.
The Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, today we're going to be talking. Excuse me. Hey, it's JJ Conway. I want to welcome you to the Ladies of Wealth live recording. These recordings get made into our Ladies of Wealth podcast. I admit I am very behind in uploading the podcast we've had since the last 2 months. Somebody asked me about it yesterday, and I was like, oh, because she hadn't seen any new updates. And so I super want to appreciate my Stephenville, Texas crew. Our Ladies of Wealth group on Meetup has grown from just 1 member 6 months ago to 15 members today. I'm super excited about that. And even though we cannot get the camera working, we're still going to talk about my recommendations for real estate investing. And so let me get to the slides. Before I give my actual projections, I want to put in perspective some stuff that's been happening in our society. Some of you may have seen this back during the time of COVID. And I do apologize. We have it streaming to Facebook, not Facebook. We have it streaming to YouTube on the vertical, but I feel like with these slides, that's not going to be very helpful. When I originally set up the broadcast, I didn't know my camera was going to be wonky. I had just finished another meeting with it, and so I don't know why it's doing this. But I do apologize to those of you who are watching on YouTube trying to use the portrait mode. I will go ahead and read this for those who can't read it on their screen.
Wait, can I read it?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Read it loud so the camera gets your voice, please.
I got you. Okay. It says...
Just start here.
Okay. For a small...
When you are 14, start there. Okay. Wait. No, you start here. Imagine you were an American.
Okay, guys. Imagine you were an American born in 1900. When you are 14, World War I starts and ends on your 18th birthday with 22 million people killed.
Ooh.
Later in the year, like that year, a Spanish flu epidemic hits the planet and runs until you are 20. So that's 2 years. 50 million people die from it in those 2 years. Yes, 50 million. When you're 29, the Great Depression begins. Unemployment hits 25%. Global, I know that's GDP, but what does that stand for?
Gross domestic product.
Global gross domestic product drops 27%. That runs until you are 33, 4 years. The country nearly collapses along with the world economy. When you are 39, World War II starts, and you aren't even over the hill yet. When you're 41, the United States is fully pulled into WWII,
World War II.
World War II. Between your 39th and your 45th birthday, 75 million people perish in the war and in the Holocaust. Holocaust kills 6 million. At 52, the Korean War starts and 5 million perish. At 64, the Vietnam War begins, and it doesn't end for many years. 4 million people die in conflict. Approaching your 62nd birthday, you have Cuban Missile Crisis, a tipping point in the Cold War?
Mm-hmm.
When was that?
I'll explain it later.
Okay. In our life on our planet as we know it could well have ended. Great leaders prevented that from happening. As you turn 75, Vietnam War finally ends. So that's 11 years. Think of everyone.
A little longer than that.
Wait.
Just keep going.
Okay.
52 to 75. That's 23 years.
No, because at 60. Wait. At 60.
Oh, wrong war.
Come on.
Okay, you were right. Go ahead. We'll cut me out of the podcast.
No, he won't.
All right. Think of
Okay.
everyone on the planet.
Think of everyone on the planet born in 1900.
Mm-hmm.
How do you survive all of that? A kid in 1985 didn't think their 85-year-old grandparent understood how hard school was. Yet those grandparents, and now great-grandparents, survived through everything listed above.
Wow. Yeah. So when I found this, there's actually a longer one that lists things like the Challenger explosion and some of the other things that are out there. And this is going to be so hard with me not being able to switch to me on the screen. Let me just try again. Nope, it's saying the camera is being used by something else, but I don't see anywhere else Can you hear me? I don't know how long y'all couldn't hear me for, so I hope it was just recently. Because I'm not going to go through all that history again. But right now we're at a place where people's ability to buy a house is rapidly outpacing their income. And it's the same, the grocery store. I mean, meat today that used to be £2 5 years ago is, well, maybe 6 years ago, is $7 a pound. People like Gordon Ramsay took the cheap oxtail and made it bougie, and now oxtail is like 15-20 a pound when it used to be like $1.99. Okay, so you have a lot of different factors in play, and real estate is no different. The ability of people to buy the house they want is rapidly escaping them. I am not, however, going to jump on the bandwagon of, oh, nobody can afford to buy a house anymore. I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon. What I am going to say, though, is a lot of people probably can't buy the house they want, and they can't buy the house they could have bought 6 years ago. I think that those are fair statements, but it doesn't mean that they can't get in the real estate game. Okay? What this does mean for you and for me is that we have to understand that this represents an opportunity for us. See, if people cannot afford to buy a house anymore and they're stuck renting and the rental prices are skyrocketing, then we find that there is a problem. And if you are the solution to a problem, you are rewarded handsomely in the market. So what am I talking about? What I'm talking about is, if you find a way to meet this need in a way that is profitable for you and profitable for the end user of the property you acquire, you will not only be able to have your pick of good renters, or if you prefer not to be a landlord, people to sell your property to, but you will be able to help stem the tide of people who are hurting, and you will be able to provide a service to people who are hurting while still making an honest profit for yourself. Now, I know some of you on here today, you don't care if it's an honest profit or not. You don't care. That didn't come out right. Ooh, that didn't come out right. What I really meant was, of course, we're not dishonest here. If you're dishonest, you're not watching my channel, right? But what I meant was, many of us, we're just going to get the dollar. We're going to get whatever dollar we can get, okay? And I understand that mindset. But now that I am financially secure, my mindset is different. I'm not just trying to scarf up all the money I can scarf up. I'm trying to make a difference, and I'm playing a long game. When I purchase a property at a tax sale for $3,000, $5,000, $10,000, it may not be the house I want to live in, but somebody else is going to be so thankful that in a world with rapidly inflated prices, that I am able to offer them a property that they can afford to buy. And because they can afford to buy it, I can command a higher interest rate. I want you to hear what I'm saying, okay? They are buying the property at one price that's lower than what they would be able, or even on par with what they could get. But because you are able to structure it for them, you can command a slightly higher interest rate. You can command a slightly higher price. You can command a slightly higher down payment because you are providing a need. Now, I am not talking about the $500,000 house across the street. Okay. That's not what I'm talking about here. That's not the population I'm talking about here. Someone who can afford to buy that house can afford to be picky and choosy and go get a perfectly fine, perfectly furnished or perfectly fixed up retail property. I'm talking about somebody who feels like the American dream has passed them by and they're never going to be able to afford to buy a house. But you come along with the house that instead of renting it out to poor people at 20 times than what the rent really should be, you are offering them an opportunity to buy a house of their own and have something to pass on to their future generations. Now you are making a difference. And because you are making that difference, you generally will find that the sale of that property or the rent to own of that property, depending on the market you're in and what's legal, that will be more profitable for you. But it's only profitable if you are solving a problem. And it's going to be hard for you to solve an affordability problem if you are going out into the MLS or going through a realtor or going through a standard broker and paying retail price for the property. See, paying retail price for the property doesn't give you any wiggle room for creative financing for the person who will ultimately rent or buy it from you. I want you to let that sink in, because this is one of the ways that I recommend that people shift their real estate investing towards the acquisition of properties that have enough equity in them that you can structure rent-to-own deals. And certain jurisdictions, you got to be a little careful about that. We can talk about those nuances later. My content is just for general information purposes only. You must always take anything that I say run it through your own personal, hired professional, financial, and real estate professionals that you have engaged on your behalf. But this is one of the methods that I am recommending that you shift to, because if you have these properties with mortgages that you can't afford to be creative on, you might soon find yourself with people who can't pay your bills. They can't pay your rent. And they're going to get in your house and they're going to be able to pay your rent, and you're going to be stuck holding the bag because you got these high mortgages because you went and bought a property at retail because somebody on some commercial, they showed you this chart. And they showed you this section of the chart between 2000 and 2025, or they showed you this section of the chart since then, without going into what happened in the pandemic. They showed you that chart and they said, oh, look, real estate goes up every 10 years. Let me tell you something. I have property that I bought up here that crashed way down to there and still hasn't gotten back up to what I paid for it back in the early 2025 or 2026. Okay. So somebody showed you that chart. They showed you a snippet of that chart and they said real estate always goes up, and you bought into it and you went and bought a property off the MLS, and then you took a mortgage on that property. And of course, you like to do the nothing down things. So you tried to finagle the system, use other people's money if you could. And now you got a huge debt service. But when the market starts to crashing, the people that will profit are not the ones with debt service. They are the ones who will have the cash to come in and swoop up the available properties and begin to offer them at creative financing prices and creative financing strategies to people who felt like they could never buy a house in their future. They felt like the American dream was out of reach. And now you have provided that American dream for them, and you have made it within reach. So that's the first method that I recommend that you focus on shifting to in 2026, is learning how to own or finance properties that you already own. Now, JJ, what if I don't own any property yet? Okay. Well, then that's the next thing that I'm going to want you to do, is I'm going to want you to shift to enough of a cash position that you can start buying properties. And I'm not talking about liquidating $200,000 of investment stocks. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about taking $5,000 to $10,000, and if it's in a retirement fund, rolling it in the self-directed IRA if you need to, and using that money to buy tax deeds, tax sales, tax certificates, tax liens, depending on where you're at, or to get creative with your marketing and your prospecting and go out there and shake the trees for deals. Those are things that we talk about in our Real Estate Investing 101 series, and we're going to start it. We're going to start it in January. We're going to kick off with understanding the different ways to profit from real estate, even if you don't buy the house. Then we're going to roll into wholesaling. We're going to roll into finding properties, driving for dollars, self-directed IRAs. We talk about all these different things that help you get started. But to me, the biggest thing you need to do in 2026 is actually get started. Don't be like the guy I met at my very first real estate investor meeting. It was Sherman Ragland's meeting out in Bowie, Maryland, and we were meeting in the firehouse, I do believe, the firehouse or the fire banquet hall. And this guy comes up to me. He's like, yeah, we're in line. It was Larry Goins. Larry Goins was the guy who taught the class, and he was selling something in the back, and Sherman was also selling something in the back. And so we chose to buy Sherman's foreclosure, Sherman and Jim's foreclosure program. And then we went back later and got Larry Goins because he was such a great influence. He gave us so much free things even after that meeting. He was really a stand-up guy. I mean, he's still alive, I'm sure, but I don't think he's teaching real estate anymore. But he was just a stand-up guy. And so we ended up getting his class, and it served us very well. Both classes served us very well. But we're in line waiting to buy the class. And I'm talking to this gentleman who tells me he has spent over $80,000 on his real estate investment education. And I was like, wow, $80,000. Well, how many properties have you bought? How many properties have you bought? And he said, well, I haven't bought any yet, but I'm about to get this class, and this is the one that's going to push me over because it's so clear. Now, at that time, I felt so bad for that dude because, back then you could get a night, like I got a $3,000 house in Baltimore City, but it wasn't pretty. Okay. Back then you could get a nice house for $25,000 in Baltimore City. And, you could, all in, purchase and renovation and put a renter in it and then refinance and pull your money out. That's how we were all taught to do it. And I don't do that anymore, but I just thought to myself, for $80,000, he could have learned from, buying 3 properties and paying real estate mentors $5,000 to walk him through it, And so I don't ever want you to be one of these people that keeps learning and learning and never takes action. Yet at the same time, I don't want you to be one of these people that takes action based on feel-good, emotional rah-rah in the back of a hotel room. And then you're left with no guidance and no actual real hand-holding on how to do the deals. And so if you have not bought a property yet in 2025, it's not too late, but I recommend you find a good real estate investment association meeting and make it your mission to acquire some property in 2026. Now, in order to do that, you're not going to like this. You're not going to like this. I know you're not going to like this because this is not what anybody wants to hear unless they have been burned by other people's money like we were when I was $800-something in debt. Most of that was upside down properties, some $32,000, $40,000 upside down. One of them was $205,000 upside down. $205,000 upside down. That house is never recovered. And so that's where I come from when I say don't get properties with a whole lot of debt service that you cannot pay. All right. You want to acquire properties in ways that allow you to do that free and clear. And that's where you're going to go into your tax sales or your lower hanging fruit. What you can do then is you can leverage them into properties that you later on might want to live in for yourself. But right now, I want you to focus on getting out of debt and building up your savings so that you can take advantage of any deals that come along when they come along. Okay. So if you already have property, I want you to learn how to possibly own or finance that property or sell it through creative financing and figure out what's legal in your state and what isn't. Because like in Texas, there's certain specific rules about lease options and leasing to own that don't apply in other states. So you want to know those things, okay? If you don't have any property, I want you to get in a position where you can buy some property. I want you to get in more of a cash position. I want you to lower your debt. I want you to lower your commitment to outside influences. And that's partially because I want you to be able to go into investing real estate free and clear, where you don't have to stress out about a mortgage not getting paid if you can't find a good renter. But look at this. Where's the big one on the Dow Jones? Okay. Look at this up and down of the market. Okay. Look at this up and down of the market. Okay. I don't know that we'll ever see as big of a drop as we see here on, 29 October, 1929, Black Tuesday, that high mark, and then it dropped down, right? And then for a long time, people struggled. There was a 10-year period of time that people were struggling, y'all. People couldn't find work. I remember the story of a friend's father who, a mentor's father. He was much older and he recently passed away. But I remember him telling the story that his dad basically worked 3 jobs without pay during the pandemic. During the Great Depression. Why did he work 3 jobs without pay? Because he knew that he didn't have anything else to do anyway. And by working these jobs, he could meet people and he could build contacts. And then, of course, guess who was the first to get hired full time back when economy was able to support it? Well, you and I probably can't do that in the situation we're in. You know why I hope you can. Today is just not coming out right. It's just not coming out right, y'all. What I mean to say is the bulk of the American public can't weather that storm without government assistance, because the bulk of the American public can't even put together $400 to help them in an emergency. Your financial standing, if we do get into some kind of severe market correction, is going to be enhanced by minimizing your debt positions, shifting to more of a cash savings position, and investing in real estate, possibly even paying down your house and making sure to protect that legally so nobody sees a juicy paid for house and goes after it. But then also, you're going to want to be able to have strategies for taking care of your family. People who made it through the Depression learned how to home economize. They learned how to grow and hunt and to grow their own food, hunt their own food, fish their own food. And you say, oh, well, I'm a city gal, I'm a city guy. But these are the kinds of things that could be is the difference between you coming through a coming crash with your family in a good financial position versus you coming through a potential future crash with your family beholden and practically enslaved due to all the debt that you would ring up during the crash, if it goes 10 years like the last big one, okay? Because you weren't prepared. So I'm going to encourage everybody under the sound of my voice. When I'm talking about my real estate recommendations for 2026, I'm not just talking about real estate. I am talking about your financial future. I am asking you to future-proof your family by learning these real estate investment skills. Real estate is going to be the big deal in the coming years. It's not going to be the only deal, but it's going to be a big deal. And AI can't do anything about housing. So you're all upset that AI is taking your job. Okay, but AI doesn't build a house. And a lot of the housing that's out there, people are going to need, they're the housing that you could buy. And somebody's going to get creative and get that money from people. It might as well be somebody good-hearted like yourself. All right. Okay. So that's my recommendation. Those are my 2 biggest recommendations. I have more, but it's really awkward for me to be going behind the screen and not being able to see you. So I'm going to wrap it up. But I don't want to say that. Even though I'm talking about real estate today, it is our third Thursday, and we always talk about real estate on the third Thursday. I want to qualify my financial recommendations for everybody under the sound of my voice is not just to get adept with real estate, to pay down their house, to pay down, to build up their savings, but is also to look at the other forms of abundance. Make sure you are getting your health together, because in order to survive what some people are projecting is coming in the market, you are going to need to be resilient, and your body is going to need to be strong. And if some of these pharmaceutical companies implode, you are going to need to be able to maintain your own health, which means understanding your body and how, what your sleep cycles and other things are. Okay. That's one form of abundance. Building relationships. Maybe you don't know how to sew. Maybe you don't know how to fish. Maybe you don't know how to hunt. Maybe you don't know how to grow anything. Can you build relationships with other people so that if this projection is as bad as they say it's going to be, that you will not be left holding the bag, and you will not be enslaved by the coming debt products that are supposedly going to bail you out, but are instead going to chain you to the wall? Okay. And so can you build those relationships? Relationships are a form of abundance. Okay. Do you have spiritual abundance? Have you built a spiritual connection? There are so many times in my business where I made a decision simply after praying and following the leading of the Spirit, and sometimes knowing without knowing, which is a gift of the Spirit. And then finding out that, wow, this or that and the other was really the Lord. Sometimes I didn't even know it was the Lord, but it was the Lord. And sometimes that's in a decision that I made for business. That's even back when I was in the military. Well, I better not go into those stories. We'll be here all day. Okay. But you want to carve out for yourself a truly abundant life in all areas of abundance. And stock market and real estate investing are just two of the many areas that you can focus on as we go into 2026. Additional forms of income, additional streams of income, those are going to be important too. In fact, I'm already seeing on books and other things a certified human product, being sold in the marketplace to delineate who produced their book with AI versus who produced their book with a human writing. So there are all these different things that you can do to position yourself. But when I think about the Great Depression, and I think about the people who I've read about or who I've talked, who were old enough that their parents lived through the Great Depression, and I was able to talk to them about what their parents taught them, what I'm finding is a common thread of now, granted, let's be real, okay? Back then, they didn't have 30-year mortgages, I don't think. Okay? Let's be real about that. They weren't all wallowing in debt. They weren't paying $1,000 for their iPads or $1,000 every month for their cell phone. Okay, that wasn't their lifestyle back then. And I'm not saying you need to give up your cell phone. I'm not saying you need to give up your iPad. I'm not saying you need to give up bougie this or bougie that. I like some bougie things. Okay, but what I am saying is positioning yourself to being able to survive if the ability to make money as we know it right now collapses. There are very few industries where people are not going to have a disruption. People are going to need housing. People are going to need trades. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take for the electric vehicles to take over the world, but for the short term, at least the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to need people who can fix cars. We're going to need people who can fix plumbing. We're going to need people who can run electricity. We're going to need those things, and AI cannot replace those things in the short term. I don't know if it ever will, but it can't replace those things. Okay. We're going to need, elder care is going to be a thing. I'll admit it. I'm a little concerned that some of these policies are pushing towards eliminating, and I don't know how many of y'all remember, but I remember being in the town hall where the Secretary of Defense said, get rid of all the old people. right? And I have a clip on my YouTube where at the beginning of the pandemic, the lieutenant governor of Texas was like, well, all the old people should willingly die so the rest of us have resources. I was just like, I can't believe this man said this. And then I end up moving to Texas, right? So we want to be a student of the market trends. I am going to recommend highly that you learn to invest in ways that do not require debt. I think that is going to serve you the absolute best going forward. Now, market projections are always a crazy thing. Nobody ever wants to go on the hook and say, I said this or I said that, because people don't want to be wrong. Okay. And I understand that myself, because I remember when somebody was leaving the country and they came to me in 2020. And can y'all see that 2020 thing? Y'all see the housing prices. Their housing had been artificially inflated in their market. People were putting properties on the housing market, and it was selling within one day. That's a sign. They were raising the price without doing much more. That's a sign of artificial inflation. That's a sign that a correction is about to come. All right. And you know what? A correction did come. Look at how it wasn't even just in their market, but in many markets, housing prices fell by 25% or more. And I was so happy they had taken my advice to sell their house at the top of the market, because you don't know when the top of the market is. The only way you know when the top of the market is when it crashes the next day. All right. Because that's the volatility of the market. You just don't know. I was so happy they had taken my advice. And then a couple of years later, they moved back. And as you can see how the property came back over time, the property came back, but they weren't here to take advantage of having sold their house and then turning around and buying the same house for cheaper. Not the exact same house, but you know what I'm saying? Like, do we have it here? Yeah. If you look over here in 2005 or so, okay. If you look over here in 2005 or so, what a lot of people did during this time is they sold their expensive houses and rented small apartments, so that when this crash happened, they were able to take their, $1 million from the sale of that house and buy a whole bunch of $250,000 properties that were pretty much equivalent to their $1 million home before the crash. And then they could live in one and rent the rest out. And they could live in one. Now they're debt free, and their rental income is all gravy. Okay. But these people that I advised, they left the country. So they didn't even get to take advantage of the fact that the property values dipped, and they could have swooped up at least 2 properties for the equivalent properties for the value of what they sold. And I always felt bad for them about that. But at the same time, I'm glad they didn't lose money on that deal. Okay. I want you to be positioned the next time we see a correction like this, the next time we see a big dip, I want you to be positioned to be able to take advantage of it. And that requires shifting to more of a cash position. All right, everybody. I think that's enough for one night. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Again, I do apologize that you can't really see me. Although, since we use these Thursday night lives for the podcast, I guess it's okay because you can hear me, hopefully. With all that, I'm going to go ahead and get off the line and tend to my little one. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's session, even though you can't see me. And I hope that you will take care and be blessed. Hi, Dennis. All right.